Before we jump in and start building our animations and drawing in Blender, I want to take a moment and talk about modes, because there's 3 modes that we're going to be working within, and the modes kind of determine what we can do. There's an object mode, an edit mode, and a drawing mode. Let's start with the object mode, because it's important to understand how this hierarchy of information works inside of Blender. To do so, let's travel over into the outliner, which is on the far right-hand side of our interface, and take a look at all of this. Whenever we start a 2D animation workspace or a 2D animation project file in Blender, it's automatically going to populate our Blender project file with 2 different objects. We have an object called stroke and an object called camera. Inside of these objects, we have a whole series of data properties and data chunks, if you will. The components of the object determine how and they kind of determine the function of this object inside the larger context of our Blender scene file. I am looking at my camera object for a moment, and you can see that it's orange. Same with the stroke. Look at the colors. These colors are important. These colors are Blender's way of communicating what object and component that we're working with. Orange is the indication of an object. We have an object here called stroke. We have another orange one here called camera. These are objects, okay? We can name these objects anything we want. I'm gonna call this one shot 01, for example, but naming the object doesn't determine their function inside the larger scene file. It's just a name. The contents of the object determine how this object is going to be used. With the camera object selected, you can see that we actually have a camera component, and this is the physical chunk of data that's going to determine how our image is going to be rendered at the conclusion of our animation. So the contents of the object are what important. Let's travel up here. I'm going to go into my stroke object for a second, and we're going to take a look at this, because this is where we're going to be doing all of our 2D animation work. This is called a grease pencil object, because this stroke component is going to give us a whole series of layers in where all of our drawings are going to be saved. So we're really putting information on these drawing layers down over here, which are a component of an object. I can name this object anything I want. Remember, this is like a backpack. This is like a container. The name of the container doesn't matter. The contents of the container are what truly are important. I call it, I don't know, Pat's Atom, for example, and there we go. But all of our stroke information, all of the lines that determine what we see and what we build are going to be saved on these data components way down here. We can name these 2. These are just the default layers that come with every Blender project file. I'm going to name this one square, and I'm also going to name this one circle. There we go. And as one might imagine, I'm going to put a square on this layer and a circle on this. Let's get to work here. I'm going to go over into my toolbar on the left-hand side of the screen and grab the good old square tool. I'm going to ensure that my strength is set to 1, so I'm creating a purely opaque stroke. And my radius is set to 80 just to make it easier for you guys to see what's going on. I'm simply going to make a square by left-clicking and dragging and hitting the return key on the side of my keyboard. In addition, I'm also going to go onto the circle layer. Notice that as I transition between these 2 different layers, the rounded rectangle in the background is changing its position. This is an important thing to be mindful of, because this in every sense is determining where all of our drawing stroke information is going to be saved. I'm going to go to the circle layer, and as one might imagine, I'm going to grab the circle tool and just create a circle. Hit return to confirm, and we're on our way. Now we have a circle and a square. What's cool about working with all of these different components and objects is that we can manipulate them at these different varying levels. I can go in and, for example, if I go into my square layer here, notice that it has its own visibility icon. Well, I can turn off the visibility of my square layer, and only the contents of that layer are going to be deactivated. Now, we haven't deleted them. We just made them invisible. I can make them reappear by clicking on that eyeball again. Same thing goes with the circle. I just can turn them on and off simply by hitting that little eyeball. In addition to being able to work at the component level, we can also go back to the object level. Remember, these objects are like backpacks. We've been working with the individual pieces that are inside the backpack. Well, what if we go in and change the entire backpack? We can go and turn everything off, all at one fell swoop in one stroke at the object level. Now, we can work at the object level and draw at the component level quite easily, but it requires us to go in to a whole series of different modes. Now that we have an understanding of the hierarchy and the relationship between all of these different items, let's go in and take a look at how we can work with inside of this. Let me zoom out. Now, at the moment, I'm working inside of the drawing mode. The drawing mode is the default mode inside of every two-dimensional workspace project file in Blender. And as one might imagine, it's going to allow us to draw very quickly. I'm going to go into my simple draw tool. I'm on my square layer here, and I can just go in and put any number of things in there quite quickly. I can just draw freely. But what if I wanted to change it? What if I wanted to edit one of my drawings or change the location of one of the objects inside of my drawing itself or inside of my scene? Well, that requires us to change the mode. The default mode is the drawing mode, but we have two others that we need to be mindful of because they have a purpose in a larger context of our animation. I'm going to go to the upper left-hand corner of my interface, and you're going to find this little pull-down menu. And I apologize if I'm in the way. Right now it says draw mode, but if we were to click on the text, it's actually a pull-down menu. And you can see all the modes that we have access to. I'm going to go into object mode real fast. Now we're no longer drawing, but we're manipulating the location, rotation, and scale of the entire backpack, of the entire object. I can select it just by clicking on anywhere on the strokes themselves, and notice that the boundary color of the entire object has gone orange. See the method to the madness here? Orange is always going to be the visualization that we're working on an object. Now at the object level, I can hit the G key and move my object around. There we go. I could also, with that object selected, hit the R key and rotate it. Left click to confirm. I can even, with that selected, I can hit the S key and make it bigger or smaller. Left click to confirm. So we can work at the object level, but we can also work at the component level. Maybe I wanted to make just the square bigger or smaller or rotate it. Well, in order to edit the square without having to redraw it, I need to go into edit mode. Let's do it real fast. Now, of course, we could go into that pull down menu in the upper left-hand portion of the screen, but I want to show you a great little keyboard shortcut that's going to make you more efficient in this. And you're going to see me doing this all the time. Notice I have my cursor here. I'm going to fire off a keyboard shortcut that's going to create what's called a pie menu underneath the location of my cursor. And the keyboard shortcut is Control-Tab. And what this is allowing me to do is to interactively change the mode underneath my cursor. So I'm going to go into edit mode. Boink. And what we're going to see here on the screen are all the individual paths that are being used to describe the outlines of our strokes. These simple little gray lines here are the paths that determine our shapes. These are the paths that were created. At the core of the grease pencil drawing engine is a path-based vector drawing system, and it's pretty cool. So we're going to be creating paths and points. More on that in a minute. If we select the path, it goes orange, which is a great way for us to very quickly understand what we're working with. And with that selection in tow, we then again can fire off the G key to grab it. I can hit the R key to rotate the selection. I can even go into a different layer, okay, on my circle layer for that matter. Do the same thing. I'll have the S key to scale it up and down, which is pretty cool. So now we have local control over the individual paths themselves. We can even go one step further by adjusting the points along the path. Once again, I'm going to go to the upper left-hand corner of the screen to where we had that pull-down menu, which allows us to change our modes. We also have these two buttons right here, and I apologize if I'm in the way. These two buttons, let me see if I can change it a little bit. These two buttons will allow us to go in right here. There we go. These two buttons will allow us to very quickly change what we're selecting. The default one is the path. We can also go in and select points along that path. Let me zoom out real fast. And now check out my circle. I'm no longer selecting just that gray outline. I can select the individual points and grab those and change their location. I've grabbed the square too, but I can go at the point level now too, which is pretty cool. The keyboard shortcut for transitioning between points and paths is the 1 and 2 on the top row of your keyboard, not your number pad, but the top row of your keyboard. 2 is going to be paths. Okay, I'll zoom in so you guys can see. There's the path selection engine. Now, if I hit the 1 key, I can go into points. You're going to see me doing this all the time, just going back and forth real quickly, because it allows me to keep my interest on the area that I'm working. Every time I take my mouse and I have to go to a different part of the interface, it just kind of slows down my workflow. So 1 to go into points, 2 to go into paths. I can edit just the selected path, or I can go in and edit points along that path. Control Tab allows me to go back into draw mode. I can continue to draw. Control Tab once again. I can go into edit mode and grab points along that path. I can change its location, do any number of things. And then if I wanted to, I could even go back into object mode and select everything. Move everything as one unit, as one group. This gives us a tremendous amount of control and a tremendous amount of influence on how we create our scenes and how we animate them. Take a couple moments, get comfortable working with inside of these different modes and this hierarchy of objects inside of Blender.